So I got an interesting article I've been holding all week, and I'd like to get to it. It's the 11 countries with the most personal freedom is what it is defined as. It's
What do you need 11 for? You've got America. What other countries necessary?
From capitalismisfreedom.com. I don't know if I agree with that, but
I don't either.
The 11 countries with the most personal freedom. Now, we have had these charts of economic freedom for years. There's one at freetheworld.org. Another one from the Heritage Foundation. The United States is currently not in the top 5 on either, and not in the top 10 on one. I think it's like ranking 8 and 18th or 8 and 17th, I think.
There are various indexes out there, and I mean, to a certain extent, you can criticize the placement of countries on a list based on the category of personal freedom or economic freedom or journalistic freedom. I mean, it's all different aspects of freedom, right? But for you to decide what's the freest country for you or what's the freest place on this planet for you, you have to incorporate your values and what's important to you.
Sure.
So it's going to be different for everybody.
If you like to surf, then perhaps some landlocked country in Africa isn't going to be the freest place, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
And these things matter to people.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to grow your own food, maybe Nunavut isn't the Canadian province for you.
But, even having said
That's a territory, not a province.
Is it a territory? You're right, it is.
Yeah.
Even having said that, it is very telling when the U.S., which is we're told this line that it's the freest country on earth, right?
That's what we were told when we were growing up. I don't think anybody says that crap anymore.
Yeah, maybe it's just gotten so obvious that it's just not true. Although some people have called in and said it.
You have to have been drunk maybe from 1987 on to believe that the United States is still the freest country in the world.
Yeah, that was it's been a real turning point.
There is no statistical evidence for that claim today.
Well, freest, that's an arbitrary description, right? So it's just a feeling, it's kind of faith-based that you have, right? But
I don't know what it means.
There is no evidence. If you try to make it objective and measurable, there is no evidence. And that's why I was saying it's telling that the U.S. doesn't show up on these lists no matter what category you look at, right?
You can say it's the best country on earth because that is a subjective opinion that, you can just make. I like this place. Fine.
I like vanilla ice cream.
Indeed. Chocolate vanilla chews. Whereas you can't say that vanilla contains more chocolate than chocolate. Therefore, the United States is not the freest country. It doesn't rank highest on Free the World. It ranks 8th on the Heritage Foundation, 17th on Free the World, like 40-something on the Reporters Without Borders.
But, Mark, that's because nobody cares. Everybody's just gotten so apathetic about freedom that's why it's not on the list anymore.
I think that there's something to be said for that opinion is that if enough people don't care, then it's not going to make a difference because in sort of a republic, a democratic republic, enough people have to believe something in order for it to happen. Mm-hmm. But, we're nowhere near that. People are fat and happy.
Yeah, just when people call in or you just hear it around and people say that, I don't think the idea of America being on any of those lists has been true for probably at least 100 years.
I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't. I wouldn't. It seems to me that maybe it's true, but then who's writing the list at that point?
Sure, right.
So let's go on with this. Freest socially, number 1, the Netherlands. Score 9.5 as the only country that currently allows both gay marriage and marijuana use on a national scale. Is it any wonder that the Netherlands took first place? I don't know if those are the things for me, but okay. Fine.
Well, that's an interesting thing. And
doesn't Colorado allow that? Doesn't Washington allow those things?
Right. Well, maybe we should treat them as separate countries, right? But it's an interesting point. In fact, maybe this will apply to all of these countries. But I wonder, we complain, and a lot of our, really intelligent callers, we talk about how people are overtaxed in the U.S., the stuff going on in Ferguson, all this other crazy things. If and that all of this stems from the government, whatever nonsense they're pulling. What if you grew up in a country like the Netherlands where things aren't necessarily that bad? Would you ever get to the point, would you ever get to voluntarism? Would you ever get to the point to where you're like, yeah, government's a bad idea? What if you are in a country, what is it, like Norway, where, Norway's not in debt? It's one of maybe the only country on the planet that isn't in debt. How does your argument against government work there?
If you like what's going on in your country, you're going to say that everything they're doing is right. But in places, in those Scandinavian countries, they tend to do things one way, and you either fit the cookie cutter or you don't fit the cookie cutter.
Sure.
And that can be very difficult for people who don't fit the cookie cutter.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I do wonder about sometimes where people think like, oh, how can these people not see that they're in a socialist, atrocity of a country or something? But I think at the same time, if things aren't by the numbers, like we're discussing to some degree here, or this isn't by the numbers, this is about marijuana and all that. I guess it's by the numbers.
By their numbers.
Yeah, by their numbers. How do you come to the realization that things are bad? That you are inherently without freedom?
Well, I think that I don't know the answer to that. I think
I don't either.
You have to be somewhat dissatisfied with the system.
Sure.
It takes a lot to sort of step outside your box and look at other people's boxes.
Yes.
But I think it also speaks to the power of putting together a list like this. This is the first list I've seen that ranks social freedom. So I don't care if they just rated it on gay marriage. It's the only list that talks about social freedom.
Yeah.
So
we need to get some competition in here.
That's right.
I think that gay marriage can be tyrannical at the same time, because if, for instance, you've got to make a cake that for somebody you disagree with, like if I'm evangelical Christian and I'm run a cake shop, I don't think I should be forced to make a cake for a gay couple that comes in.
Oh, sure. I think state-sanctioned marriage in any flavor can be tyrannical.
So, I mean, I imagine that the people that are putting this list together probably don't value it the same way I do.
True.
But they've got the only list. Let's go on to this list with the 11 countries with the most personal freedom.
Yeah, curious to hear more
And so
about
number
this.
one's the Netherlands, and I didn't even get through the thing here. Though it does not score highest in any one particular category, it's very high averages in every category are enough to make it top the scale. The one category that it really detracts from their personal freedom score falls under political imprisonment, as it is the only nation on this list that sometimes allows for it, despite for not allowing torture whatsoever. So otherwise, if you're seeking personal freedom, go Dutch.
Funny. Well, I mean, like maybe countries like the U.S. don't nominally allow for political imprisonment, but they actually do.
Sure.
It's like just not.
There's so many
codified or
laws in the
whatever.
United States, they can imprison you for whatever they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of the United States, it's they've got a little paragraph about it. It's worth noting that the United States, despite being commonly touted as the land of the free, does not appear on this list. It scored 8.7 out of 10 and ranks 17th overall. Most of its low ranks come from differences between the states, but it should be worth noting that it scores far worse on crime than other countries seen here, not just committed by its citizens, but also by its government.
I'm surprised it scored that high.
Well, I wonder, because I've often wondered this. I would like to see a list of places on Earth, social and economic freedom ranked, and I want to see them ranked against New Hampshire. I want to see where New Hampshire shows up, because
We might have to do that list ourselves, because I don't think anyone's going to do it.
No one's
for
probably going
us.
to do it. Actually, I've talked to Jason Sorens, the founder of the Free State Project, about doing it. But Hong Kong rates very high, but it's not really a nation, and also it's got a terrible organized crime problem. So
And how do you immigrate there?
Well, you just go there.
Yeah.
So, number 2, freest country in the world. This is social freedoms now at capitalismisfreedom.com. Uruguay. Surprised? It's a 9.4.
Really?
Though Uruguay ranks very low comparative to other nations in terms of economic freedom, the personal freedoms it affords are quite exceptional. It ties with New Zealand for best freedoms for relationships, the highest in the world. It's very common to see mixed race couples in Uruguay, and there's only a slight contempt in general against foreigners. However, as many expats will attest, once a Uruguayan knows who you are, they become your best friend. Though it has many issues concerning political corruption of media similar to Japan, it checks out well otherwise in terms of freedom of expression.
So this isn't just all about laws, it's actually about like the culture as well?
Well, it's going to have to be. If you're talking about social freedoms, it's going to have to be.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, the culture can be reflected in the laws as well, but it's just kind of hard to measure,
This is about the laws, and they're just mentioning sort of the social aspects of it sometimes.
Okay, gotcha.
But there are some
what are the criteria again? What are the axes that they're judging these countries on?
I haven't dug that deep into it. It's a relatively sort of surface article. They don't give me that information.
Well, it would help to know.
Well, they mention it as we go through, as like mixed race couples are common and it's legal.
Prostitution, drug laws,
gay marriage is mentioned.
Marriage.
Marijuana freedom, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Uruguay's, they're better as far as religious. Like there's no state, which is kind of rare down in South America, where religion isn't that big of a deal. Like I think they kind of go out of their way to make sure that religion and state have no involvement whatsoever.
Uruguay also scored very well on crime, with a higher perceived crime rate than what actually occurs, though homicides are higher here than other nations on the list. Furthermore, the Uruguayan government made international news by legalizing the trade of marijuana as of last year. Your thoughts on social freedoms here in this country and around the world? 855-450-3733. Free Talk Live. And we've been talking about this list of socially freest countries here on Free Talk Live, and I think it's it's kind of interesting. The United States didn't show up, and that's interesting, right? The freest country on earth is what we've been told our whole lives, and
it shows the power of marketing, right?
It's true. You say something often enough, and then people are going to be able to, they're going to believe it.
They believe it, but then when you actually, whatever, of course, we don't know exactly what metrics they're using, but when you actually get down to brass tacks, you find out, oh, wait a minute, this thing's number 17.
Yeah, and I suspect the United States' social freedoms have been diminishing over the last few decades, but I think that their application of them has probably gotten more even-handed. So,
application?
Well, for instance, it's probably been legal for some time for black people and white people to marry.
Okay.
But it hasn't been socially acceptable. Like
No.
you're gonna deal with a lot of grief over it.
To this day.
Yeah, I think, but less so today than it has been.
Sure.
Two good friends of mine are in mixed relationships, and one of them lives in a very socially conservative, one would even go so far as to call it a redneck area. He doesn't seem to have that much trouble, and I think that things are getting better, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, it's comforting to hear. Ferguson makes one wonder how much better things have gotten, but certainly I understand your point.
Yeah. So also, I think that there's other things about what's going on in Ferguson. You're not talking about just the color of people's skin. You're talking about sort of social conflicts there, that are going on between, sort of a group on top and a group on bottom, and a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah, there's a lot of authoritarianism being battled out there, not just necessarily racism. Certainly, I agree with that.
And when people are upset about what's going on, and then they steal big screen TVs or break into stores and set them on fire, they're not helping either.
Sure, that doesn't help.
Yeah, but maybe it does. It did get the attention, so I don't know.
Yeah, but I don't know. I wonder about that, because that's almost like saying that they did it on purpose, and I don't know if that's accurate. If anyone was just trying to get the attention of it,
I think it's anger and motivated by greed.
I think there's a lot of frustration and just I'm going to break every single rule, because when you have such extreme authoritarianism that clearly was on display in Ferguson by the police, and I'll just say by the government. Then I think you'll get an equal or greater reaction.
Let's go on with our list here from capitalismisfreedom.com on the most socially free places in the world, countries in the world. Number 3, coming down the list here, from number 1 being the Netherlands, number 2 being Uruguay, and number 3 is, I just have to do that for Ian's sake, and number 3 is New Zealand. Coming in, New Zealand is also one of the top-ranking nations in the world of economic freedom, so it's not surprising to find it on this list here also. Though the nation does deal with problems of sexual violence as well as theft and burglary like other nations ranked high in individual freedom, it also has the best freedoms for relationships in the world. New Zealanders enjoy a much higher freedom from social hostility towards religion than most other nations and enjoy the more freedom from government restrictions of religion than any other country. In addition, they're very accepting of all groups of people, regardless of gender or sexuality. Freedom of expression is also very high, but not high enough to put it in the lead. So I'm not sure what freedom of expression entirely means, but what
It's
held
probably free speech, protest, that kind of thing.
that kind of thing. They have no constitution. Basically, the government that they have is the government that, like, it can change all the time. It's fluid.
Well, I mean, the Constitution is just a piece of paper anyway.
Yeah,
right?
which
That's what George
government
Bush
isn't
said.
fluid? Yeah, he was right too.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they treat it as anyway. He's at least accurately portraying how the government thinks of it here. But in New Zealand, the cost of living is really high, right? Because everything has to be imported, like it's on an island.
Well,
I was
they got
interested
they have
about
mutton.
Yeah, they've got great grass-fed meat, but other than that, you kind of have to import everything, right?
Yeah, as I understood it, New Zealand is incredibly inexpensive. Now, I understand, I
It's
guess...
inexpensive?
Or, I mean, expensive.
Expensive,
Sorry. It's very expensive to live there.
Manufacturing, they can't have much of that, so
No,
everything
right.
has to be brought in that way.
Yeah, so I guess... I mean, I suppose that comes into the question then, what is personal freedom? How do you define that? Because certainly, like, the expense of living being that high. Oof.
But everything has to be brought here in the United States, too. What do we manufacture here in the United States? Almost nothing anymore. Cars, and those are expensive.
Oh,
So-
I agree that the United States is an expensive place to live. It's not cheap, and you can just cross a border and you can find out just how cheap you can really live. And it's true.
Yep, it's sort of cheaper in Mexico. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Interesting list, though. I think it's fascinating to look at this.
Sure.
Going on with the 11 countries with the most personal freedom. Number 4, Japan. One of the only non-collectivist nations in Asia, Japan ranks solidly in every single category. There are 2 major caveats concerning personal freedom in Japan: freedom of assembly, which has some restrictions in certain groups, and political control in the media, which ranks lower than any other of the highest freedom nations. To make up for it, Japan has a surprisingly low crime rate. Though torture is still an acceptable form of punishment in some cases, its statistics knock the other top nations out of the park. Even burglary, which most top nations scored at a 0 of possible 10 points in, received an 8.8 in Japan. Albeit stable in everything, it does not surpass the top 3 on the list.
Well, that's interesting. I wonder if the personal freedom exists there because of just how damned polite they are, and they really are. I mean, I used to go there often, and it's just incredible how kind. I mean,
That's kind of a stereotype, too.
it's a bit of a stereotype, but it's also
It's his stereotype. He had that experience. You know?
Yeah, but I mean, it's very much, I think, kind of culturally enforced. We talk about cultural enforcement, but at the same time, a lot of their culture that they've had for thousands of years, like Shinto, has really does allow for a lot of open things. I mean, women have been the charge of the household there for thousands of years. I mean, this is not, a lot of these Western ideas that we have just don't play ball over there, and so I can see that. Yeah, I could see it as a personally free place, though it's ironic. It does have a token emperor.
Well, I think that, that sells postcards.
Yeah, that is really what it does.
I think it's interesting when countries that have sort of evolved up a different leg of the tree, or that we get an opportunity to look at that. Because sort of socially, Japan doesn't have much to do with the United States.
No, right.
And, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, well, go ahead.
Oh, I can read number 5 here for you. Norway. Norway scores the second highest out of all the nations in the category of freedom of relationships, as well as freedom of expression. They score well across all social groups, which is only to be expected from a Nordic nation. Similar to Iceland, Norway is brought down by its crime level, except that they do a better job of reporting their statistics. Similar to Iceland, the rate of sexual violence in this country is exceptionally high compared to other high freedom nations. Even with this, most Norway's other crime rates are some of the lowest in the world, allowing it to rank solidly at number 5. They keep on mentioning the sexual crime thing. It's very interesting.
Well, that's an aspect of personal freedom.
Sure is. Absolutely is. We've been going through this list of countries with the most personal freedom, and I find it fascinating because we've been, here in the United States, we've been told all our lives, this is the freest country on earth. And, I'm not so sure it is, because it doesn't rank the highest in really any of these lists. Let's go on with our list of freest countries here from a social ranking. Number 6. I probably should be doing this like Casey Kasem and counting up instead of counting down, but we started at number 1, and that's what we'll do. We're going down to number 6 here. Ireland. Tying with Iceland, Ireland is a nation bustling with personal freedoms. They get poor marks for banning homosexual couples from adopting, but in all other respects, Ireland ranks well in freedom of relationships.
Yeah, and it's been talked about a lot recently in terms of a place to start a business, because it's kind of like the business taxes are really low or something like that, right?
Oh, for Ireland, you mean?
In Ireland.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked by this, though, because, this is a country that's sort of in a quasi-civil war, with Northern Ireland, and it's completely a religious issue. Well, some people could say the British government's getting involved, fine, but by and large, it's a religious issue. So
legally, they have freedom of religion there, though.
Yeah, I knew a guy who was.
It's an issue of control.
Sure, it's an issue of control, but I think socially, now granted this is anecdotal, but I knew a guy who was actually part of a very famous group over there in Ireland, and he had said that when he came to America, I was having lunch with him, he said he was absolutely shocked that people here, one person could be a Catholic, the person next door can be an atheist, and nobody thought two bits of it. Like, that was his words. He was amazed at how well people got along here. And so I'm a little stunned by this,
okay.
I have to say, just based on my own anecdotal evidence.
Well, Ireland shows up on the economic freedom charts, too, in the top 10.
Sure.
So I love it when a nation shows up on both. It kind of gives me this, makes me wonder about it. But like I said, I don't know where New Hampshire ranks among these places that, as far as the social and political and economic freedoms. And
I think that'd be great to get a provincial study along with a state study, not just national.
And I'm convinced, this is just me looking at these charts for years, reading a bit on them here and there. I can't say I've pored over them like maybe some academics have, but I'm of the impression that New Hampshire ranks certainly in the top 10 freest places in America, because this is the freest state as ranked by the Mercatus Center 3 out of the 5 times that they've done the rating, and I hear that we're going to be number 1 again on the 6th one. There certainly are some states that have been kind of neck and neck, but New Hampshire, has been number 1 the most times. So anyway, going on with Ireland, their score for freedom of expression also ranked very highly. So I guess it's like freedom of speech and that kind of thing. When it comes to crime, data was unavailable for a lot of different segments: trafficking, assault, burglary, just to name a few. So its poor rank in torture managed to bring it down substantially. That means that torture is not completely outlawed, as well as its inclination for organized crime, if not for this missing data. Ireland may rank much higher, though it's still probably not enough to rank the other countries. So that's fascinating. I think.
I'm really interested I'm really intrigued by that, because also with Ireland you have there's I can't think of the name of them off the top of my head, but there's very famous where they will have children from Ireland come to the U.S. and stay with U.S. families.
Exchange students?
Yeah, not exchange, because this is really to just kind of get them away from the nonsense that's happening in that country, as far as like with the IRA,
but
etc.
Isn't that stuff over?
Well, this is just a few years ago. I can't believe I'm talking the time frame I'm talking about where I was aware of these things would be 07 to 09.
Okay,
and it doesn't seem like that long ago that things could have blown over, but maybe.
Well, we know what we know that they've telegraphed what number 7 is. Let me go through this. We were talking about the list of socially free nations. I want to just ram through this list here.
Sure.
So number 7, tied with Ireland, is Iceland. Number 8, Denmark. By the way, you're going to find out the United States is not on the list of most free nations socially. Number 9, Estonia. I think Estonia it's a real success story. They're one of the former Soviet bloc countries. Then Portugal. Amazing story with Portugal as far as their freedoms, but economically they're in shambles.
Well, especially since they lost Hong Kong
and
Macau. They had Macau, not Hong Kong. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. And then number 11 is Australia. So I was I was hoping to see Canada on this list, but it just didn't show up.
Wow. So surveillance state is not part of the personal freedom thing, because Australia is arguably next to maybe Britain, like the most surveilled country on the planet.
Yeah, London has like 1 million closed circuit cameras on
Yeah.
the streets of London. Yeah, amazing stuff.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.